Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. I'd love to welcome each of you viewing today to Black Writers Weekend. Today's panel is called His Story. It's an all-male and all-Black panel comprised of a few dope authors ready to speak about the importance of their stories and that of the Black male experience. But before I introduce today's panel, I need to acknowledge our sponsors: Defina Books, Amazon KDP, Wattpad, and Goodreads. Make sure you show each of these sponsors some love, because without their support and generosity, we wouldn't be able to deliver such an amazing production to you. So with that, my name is Darius, and I'm the co-host of the popular podcast, Wild Black. But week after week, we bring you experts and credible guests whose intentions match our own. That being to create a smarter, more informed, more inspired community of Black Americans and Black folks globally. With that, I'm pleased to introduce you to our esteemed panel of guests today. Starting with creative thinker, author, and dope individual, Kenn Bivins, author, speaker, and entrepreneur, ENITAN BEREOLA, motivational speaker, Steve Canal, who will be joining us shortly, and lastly, the author and self-proclaimed geeky engineer, Michael Haspil. I love that. Fellas, welcome today. How are you today?
Very good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm doing great.
Good. Kenn, brother, it's good to see you again, my man. It's good to see
you.
Are you all excited about today?
Absolutely.
Man, look, anytime I can talk and tell my truth is a good day. So I don't want to waste any time. Y'all ready to jump into this thing a little bit?
Let's do it.
All right. Yeah. All right. Let's everybody stretch, get ready. I want to have a really good conversation. We're going to touch on a couple of things here. We talked about this being about Black voices, this being about the Black male experience. And since we're all creatives, I want to start with something that connects us. So I want to start with a quote. I'm going to read it just to make sure I get it right. And before, so I believe this quote ties us all together as artists and creators. And even more than that, it ties us together as culture and community. It's from Miss Nina Simone. Nina says, an artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times. If you agree with Nina, then I want to start by asking you this one question. Kenn, I'll start with you. Since it's your duty to reflect the times, what content and or theme do you feel responsible to talk about?
My focal point right now is touching on what we don't really talk about in our community, which is mental health, especially in this time that we're going through,
right,
with the pandemic, with the government, with economic issues. We're hurting, and that's not a new thing. But I think those stories need to be told so that we don't feel like we suffer alone.
Right. I love that. ENITAN, brother, why don't you answer that question for us next?
I agree with Kenn. I mean, he stated it best. I think that's, there's a ton of issues to kind of sift through, right? And you have to almost pick and choose, like, what am I going to focus on? And I think wellness is really the start of it. And, I don't want to get too fluffy and cloudy, but, the idea that a lot of things we look for externally, but we're all kind of stuck in this quarantine at this time, this specific appointed time, where we can't go outside. We can't do what we're used to. We can't run or escape to the distractions. We have to kind of go internally and then deal with the external. So I think that this opportunity to go internally is essential and imperative, but I also know that we must have the tools to do that, because a lot of people can't just willy-nilly take a self-assessment of themselves and, improve and challenge themselves daily. There are tools, therapy, digital therapy, virtual therapy. There's so many tools, apps that are available for wellness. And I'm so glad that we are available for that conversation as Black folks.
Absolutely. Michael, you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, what I like to try to reflect in my stuff is include, excuse the phrase, but not like everything is black and white. So there's a lot of gray in the world, and especially now, everything has become so polarized. It's like you're with us or against us. There's no attempt to understand other people and try to figure out what's going on, build bridges.
Yeah, that's important. That's really important. I've got some other questions to get to, but I want to dive into this topic just a little bit more. Right? As Black men, we get a bad rap out there for not really taking care of ourselves all the time, for not paying attention, for not going to the doctor, for not going and getting therapy. So I just want to dive into that since wellness was kind of the thematic that you all brought forward. What does that look like, or rather, what should that look like for us? And Ken, we'll go back to you.
Okay, I'm going to try not to get in trouble on this one. I feel like
there's nothing wrong with a little good trouble.
I feel like we have to take care of ourselves. But before we take care of ourselves, we got to take care of what we came from, which is women. Black women are have the highest rate of homicide. And when you look at our community among Black men, we're not speaking up enough for our Black women. Now, at the same time, we rely upon them. We come from them. We need them. So I think that's where it starts. And perhaps maybe it hasn't started there because we aren't loving ourselves the way we need to love ourselves.
Okay. I love that. Real quickly, our brother Steve Canal is here. I want to bring him into the show real quick. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well.
It's all good, brother. How are you today?
I'm good. We have a little hurricane rolling through Louisiana right now, so I apologize, but all is well. No complaints.
Oh, man. So you're going to use that hurricane as an excuse this morning. We completely get you. We hope you are safe. Hope everything is well. Your family is intact and your property is left undamaged and safe. I'm going to pray that for you real quick. We're talking about some great topics, man. And don't worry, fellas. We're going to talk about what you're doing specifically. But there's just so much going on in the world right now. When you get a panel of amazing Black men together, I think we have a responsibility to have this conversation, at least to some degree. So the next question I want to ask is really, and I'm going to speak personally, it's something that's always on my mind. And I'm going to make the assumption that it's always on yours, right? And the latest in what seems to be an endless stream of police brutality, police shootings, and police killings, from Ahmaud Arbery to Breonna Taylor to George Floyd, and now to Jacob Blake, right? It seems to be endless. The flip side is right now our country seems to be paying a lot of attention, including yesterday there was a lot of activity that came out of the sports world. What's each of you all's perspective on what happened yesterday, from LeBron walking out and they canceling the season for both LA teams, from the NBA pulling back on the games that were happening yesterday over into Major League Baseball and soccer and the tennis? I'd love to get your perspective. And Steve, brother, since you just showed up, you get to catch this question first. Where are you at with this?
Absolutely. I think what happened yesterday was needed. I think there's two ways to look at it. One, protesting at that point was very important to make a statement and show where you stand and show that, we're instrumental piece to the success of your entertainment and this industry. So I'm going to need you owners. I'm going to need you, television networks. I'm going to need you, leadership of the NBA, to do a little bit more. And I know my value, and I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to show the importance of sacrifice right now by protesting these games, so we can bring everybody to the table to have further discussions and make some demands of what needs to be done. Yeah. In the locker room for the Milwaukee Bucks, they were talking to leadership in Milwaukee, in Minnesota, not Minnesota, I mean, in Milwaukee at the time, from the police chief and so forth, to be able to have discussions of what can be done now, right? Obviously, voting is important in order to make change and create change. Laws need to change, right? Yeah. But on the flip side of that, right, what's also important is the platform. And what I didn't want to happen was, yes, we made a stance yesterday, and further discussions are happening. But by leaving the bubble, that's one, taking a platform away. where every day you see Black Lives Matter on the screen from these games. Every day you're able to make comments and, you know, make sure names aren't being forgotten every day after in the post-game report.
Yeah.
And another thing that's lost is money is being taken away from the Black community because you're no longer getting checks. So I wanted to make sure that they understood that point as well. So it's important to make the stand that day and bring awareness that day, because we've always asked, like, what would happen if our players actually boycotted and didn't show up for a game? We all wanted that. We all brought that up, and they did it, and it shook up the world yesterday.
Yeah.
During the Republican convention, it took eyeballs from that to the NBA, and it brought awareness to the importance of voting.
I think that point is spot on, especially the give and take that you brought up. We got the show, we got the unity, we got them to walk away, but at the same time, you gave up a platform. And for each of you all as authors, you recognize the importance of having a platform and a perch from which to speak and push your voice out. So, ENITAN, I want to take that same question to you, brother. What were your thoughts on what happened yesterday?
I think it's a good time to take risks, man. We're not going to see significant change without significant sacrifice. And, the status quo is gone. I think we have to come to terms with that and come to grips with that and come to the realization that, we're in the process of reconstruction, of like restoration, right? I think the thing about construction and deconstruction is you can never tell one apart in its early stages. It looks like something was always being destroyed when it's being built up. So we can't get to that other side. We're going to keep hitting these roadblocks, right? It started to get a little bit quiet. And I actually told my wife last night, look, I haven't even seen the video. I maintain my mental health and my wellness by knowing what I'm able to handle and staying away from this. So I haven't seen it. I did say that I am glad that the momentum has picked back up because we needed to take it to another level.
Right.
This created another level because it was getting quiet and conversations were shifting. I did see on Twitter that, the police incident that happened was trending. The NBA was trending above the RNC, which is a good thing, right? We need to get awareness out. We got 49 days or so to the election. We really got to get as much pressure as we can and make it as loud as we can about how significant it is to vote to vote in the upcoming elections. So, and locally as well. So, I appreciate the stance. I appreciate the sacrifice. And lastly, I'll say that, I know we're in some history right now, some historic times, but no, this is different. And we're all here. What do you stand for?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? In 100 years, were you did you put up 25 points or did you make that sacrifice for the change that now exists?
Yeah.
Where did you could push this thing to the right or push it to the left? What are you going to do? What did you do in this moment? And we're all here with our platforms at this appointed time for a reason.
Right.
But we really got to hone in on that and not neglect that. Now is the time to take those risks.
You're right. Michael, I'm coming to you. We're talking a little bit about how the platform of the NBA was tweaked, elevated, and paused all at the same time, right? It transformed. It was no longer the image of Black Lives Matter. It was the embodiment of Black Lives Matter. And here's your boycott, here's your loss of dollars. And to your point, ENITAN, here is the fact that we're trending above the RNC. So Mike, the question I have for you, very similar. What were your thoughts? And more importantly, where do you think we go? And I mean, us personally, as those with a voice and with a platform, where do we go from here? How do we take this fight and expand it? How do we take this fight and carry it?
Yeah, well, along the lines of the NBA thing, I think they did what happened there was kneeling, for the national anthem. That's not making headlines anymore. People are used to it. It's become the new normal. So the NBA shutting down, that makes the headlines. I don't exactly know what I'm at a loss for what I can do. I've just noticed that a majority. I think we're seeing such a pivotal change because when you see these big Black Lives Matter protests and everything, a lot of the folks marching are not just Black people, and that to me that is the most important thing I've seen come out of this out of this movement. But I don't know personally what I can do. I just try to reach out and try to get people to see a different reality. One of the things that I would bring to case, as I'm an engineer, and I've been an engineer my entire career, and I have only met 2 engineers that work in aerospace that were not veterans, so that were black men, and that one of them's my brother. So it's I think opening up people to that there are realities that they may not be exposed to or may not even think about. That's what I try to do, is just go, hey, you can do this. This is an avenue you can take that maybe nobody's ever talked to you about before.
Yeah. And I think you're point. And I want to commend you for what you said. And that was being courageous enough to say what so many of us won't say. And that is, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Right. And I think that's important, because starting the conversation with I don't know what to do can often open the people up around you to real conversation about how you get there. Because being very, very frank, I don't think there's anyone who truly knows what to do next, because what happened yesterday was a first in history. Who has experience with where you go after that, right? When you consider the fight that we're fighting, this is all new. It's new and old at the same time, right? And the game is different, the landscape is different, the players are different, but the risk is the same. So I want to take another step in, and Ken, I'm going to come back to you on this one. I'm smiling because this is going to be a fun question, so to speak. I'm not going to ask you if, I'm going to ask you when, because black men do cry. So from an emotional standpoint, coming to you, Ken, which of the now long list of hashtags, police murders and shootings, which has broken you down the most and why?
It started for me with Tamir Rice way back when, and it's because I had they're grown now, but little boys at the time, and as a parent, I put myself in his parents' position. I can't fathom, but that's when it really hit for me.
Yeah. Tamir Rice that's been the toughest for me as well. That's been a rough one. Steve, what about you?
Man, yesterday I got in the car and I just went for a drive. I told my wife I just got to go for a drive. And through my drive, I just started crying.
Yeah.
And for me, I think every situation is dear to our hearts, and it's emotional. But what got to me yesterday is just the lack of compassion and care for people to say, man, I need these players just to play. Like, that guy, he wasn't a good guy, and it's just like, put it all together. Like, these are human beings, these are human beings who have emotions and care, and they have a platform, and they're using their platform to seek change. We might not see change today. We might not see change tomorrow, but it's setting the seeds for change, and they're allowing their platform to be leveraged to get us there. So yesterday, I was just tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired of explaining. I'm tired of trying to convince people. I'm tired of trying to get people to understand why we feel the way we feel, why we don't feel loved, why we don't feel cared for after all that we've done for this country and society. So I was just tired.
Yeah. Patrice, we hear you. I see your comment there. It's tough. I'm going to ask the rest of you the same question. Don't worry, you're not going to escape it. I'll make a comment as you get your thoughts prepared. For me this morning, I shed tears this morning. And it was a combination. It wasn't just what happened. It's the stacked effect. It's the fact that it keeps happening, right? And in addition to that, and I will not say his name, the shooter yesterday with the long arm rifle, I saw tweets from established people in our media, in our news cycle, pushing the narrative of he's my hero and I'd vote for him for president. And in that moment, I was not shocked. I was not surprised, but I was wholly and completely disappointed in what America can be at times. It's unfortunate that that we care so little about each other that we would hail someone who just murdered 2 people in cold blood in the middle of the street. It wasn't even from there. He wasn't defending. He came to attack. So, ENITAN, I want to go with you with the same question. Which of these many hashtags and events now has brought you to tears, and why?
Man, started with Trayvon for me, and I can't even say started with because I've always been an empath. But I remember sitting in church. I think it was after Trayvon, and there was this kid that looked like him. And this was years ago, and I was just looking at this kid like, yo, that kid doesn't stand a chance. You know what I mean? Like, there is no difference between them two, and it just resonated because it made him real. And I know that kid, like Trayvon, I went to college in Florida A&M University. So, like, I know that kid, I know that energy, I know that why, someone can take that as a threat who misunderstands the culture and misunderstands our love, and the way we move and the way we do things. So it just hit me on a soul level, because I was able to put those emotions into an actual person when I saw this guy sitting in front of me at church, like, yo, he looks just like Trayvon. Yeah. I started crying in church. I used to write for Essence and Soul Train back then. I wrote something about it that really resonated at the time. But, again, for me as an empath, I feel deeply all the time. Right. It doesn't take many triggers, which is why I kind of, like I said earlier, how I curate my world around me, and I don't consume too much of what is unhealthy, not food, but media as well. And one thing that I do, one practice that I use, because look, the more of the layer that you attempt to peel back of what is, right? A lot of people are waking up now, right? Some people have been woke. Some woke people are too woke and need to take a nap. But I really think that, there is a hope and a joy and a peace that is true. And everything that we're seeing is reality, right? And a lot of people conflate reality and truth. There's one truth, whether you choose to believe the truth or not. Truth is truth, whether accepted or denied. And then there's a whole lot of reality which satisfies our senses. Our senses respond to what's real. If our senses don't respond to it, it's not real. That's how magic works. Perception and trickery and all of those things. And a lot of what we see has been proposed to us. Everything we see has been proposed to us so that we receive it in a certain way. So I think it's important to just kind of like lean on hope and realize and lean on truth and not get distracted by realities of this world and not grow weary in well-doing and continue to endure, because the matter of the fact is, like, we are the victors. It's already written, right? That's how I see things. So that allows me to deal with day by day all of the treachery of the day, because I'm like, all right, we may be losing this battle, but I know we win this war.
I love that. We've already won. We just have to be patient and go through what it takes to get there. I love that. I love that. Mike, I want to come to you with the same question. And I know you all have to be wondering, how does this relate to what I do myself? Don't worry. The next round of questions will get us there. So, Michael, man, talk to me about which of these many hashtags affected you the most.
Yeah, it was a moment as horrific as the whole George Floyd video was, and I saw that and it was so profoundly disturbing, but I was wary because I was just like, it's all, folks are always keen to point out there's always another camera angle, there's always more to the story. We only get to see the clip that starts, we don't get to see what happened 15 minutes before. We get to see what happens right then. So I was a little wary, but I was just so angry more than anything, watching the impotence of the people, and there was nothing they could do. Just looking and watching this man die as this guy knelt on him, and it was just rage. But it didn't really hit me until later, because I always want to give people the benefit of the doubt, like I said, and I profoundly love this country. And it was later when a CNN crew was arrested live on television. It really kind of shattered my world, because I was like, I can't believe this is happening in my country. I cannot believe this is happening. And I didn't want to believe it. I was like, if we saw this on cameras on anywhere else in the world, we would condemn the government and everything as as you know, despotic and tyrannical. And when that happened on CNN, people just kind of blew it off.
Yeah.
And I admit I had to just go off social media for months after that.
I can feel you. I remember that moment, and it was painful. It was very painful. So here's how the transition works. Right, we started this session with the Nina Simone quote about our duty as an artist, and I wanna use that quote to transition into talking about what each of you do. Right, so each of you are a creator, and each of you are an artist in your own lanes, and you each have a responsibility to yourselves, to your families, and to your communities. So I want to use that quote to talk about what you do in your writing and how it's contributing to the community. So we're going to go back to you, Steve. Tell the people a little bit about yourself and how you write and what you write about and your contribution.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm fortunate, and I'll always say this, I'm fortunate enough to have been to every country every state in the U.S. I've been all over the world. I've met so many amazing people, from Obama to Damon John to so many people. And I've been able to get so much information shared with me.
Right.
And I always felt like I would be doing a disservice if I didn't take that information and share it with the world.
Yeah.
So what I like to do, my format, my writing style is taking the life lessons that I've learned. I've played college basketball. I've worked for Fortune 100 companies. I've started my own business, been an entrepreneur, built it up to, 7 figures.
Yeah.
I've failed and crashed to rebuilding it again. So all those life lessons that I've ever learned, I take that and I share it in my bodies of work. And with those that I've come in contact with, I kind of allow you to be a fly on the wall and get a piece of those conversations that I've had with the likes of a Gary Vee to, ENITAN, who's on here as well, and so forth, and sharing those into my bodies of work to help people not only achieve success, but sustain success over time.
Yeah.
Which is evergreen. It's not you just do this one thing and that's it.
Right.
There's innovation, there's technology and so forth. So I try to apply and put that into, my bodies of work to allow people to tap into that energy. Right. Even if it's my posts on social media, I'm always putting encouraging and enlightening posts. Yeah. Life isn't perfect. It's far from perfect, and life is very hard, and we all deal with things. But I never want people to feel as if, it's not, there isn't an opportunity for you to achieve your level of success, whatever it is in life.
Yeah, brother, thank you for that. That's an amazing place to stand, and it is so needed. We thank you for that wholeheartedly. Mr. Geeky Engineer, I love that. Michael, let's talk a little bit about what do you do and the writings and the creations that you come up with. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm more of a, like I said, geeky. So I'm more of a pop culture guy, and I was writing, I write urban fantasy and science fiction and horror. And when I was writing urban fantasy, I realized there was not a whole lot of urban. If you to use that kind of Hollywood euphemism for black films or films by black filmmakers, there wasn't a lot of urban in urban fantasy.
Right.
So instead of writing, I still have vampires and stuff because that's what you got to do. But I wrote about an immortal pharaoh from the old kingdom of Egypt. So try to reintroduce, some of that African heritage back. And granted, it takes place in modern day Miami, but he's a good guy. He's a hero. So I tried to concentrate on that again, just trying to get people to see things not exactly the way that they've been always told things. Yeah. And what was interesting to me is when I wrote my novel way back in like 2011, at the end I had this massive riots break out over race. Now I thought that was really far-fetched when I wrote the book. Like, that's not something that would happen nowadays. It's fantasy, Right. And then come to see what's going on, I was just like, and I got a lot of people contacted me afterwards going, "Hey, I didn't think, when I read your book, I didn't think this would happen. And look at this, so."
In addition to author and geeky engineer, we can throw a prophet onto that list as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Well, I want you to mention the book. You talked about the book. It sounded interesting. Tell everyone the name of it.
Oh, it's a Graveyard Shift. I'm sorry. I always forget. So, yeah, but yeah, this is it. Came out from Tor in 2017, and I'm working on more stories in that same universe.
Nice.
And it's loosely about an immortal pharaoh in modern day Miami trying to fight ancient vampire conspiracy with the help of some pretty sketchy allies.
So I can tell you this: you've picked up a new reader. I love that type of stuff. I love when it's Black, so I'm all in. I'm all in. Kenn, we're coming to you next question with it. What are you talking about? What are you writing about?
So I'm a geeky guy too. I don't know how they let the geeky guys in the cool guy room, but I grew up on comic books and sci-fi, and in a house full of girls, I felt invisible. Growing up as a teenager in a very racist city, I felt invisible. Working as the only Black designer developer in advertising, I felt invisible. And so I craft stories, whether as an illustrator, as a novelist, nonfiction writer, or even some of the apps that I've done, online apps that I've done, with the premise of visibility. I write from my own experiences where I once upon a time didn't feel like I was seen. And so the stories that I do are for my audience to see themselves, so that they don't feel like they are the only ones who are going through whatever experiences that they are going through, have gone through. I've written 2 novels, finishing up a 3rd one. I've written a children's book series. And although all of those bodies of work were different in terms of the subject matter, in terms of the audience, they all have the common thread, which is you are not invisible. I see you.
I love that. Hit us with the names.
So my current series is, as I said, a children's book series. It was a little break from writing a novel. It's called 39 Lessons.
It's good. I can speak from personal experience.
39 Lessons, particular to this conversation, 39 Lessons for Black Boys and Girls is my first #1 bestseller, still is #1 bestseller on Amazon. It is written simply for children to be able to read solely, but it's intended for children to read with an adult and have a conversation about race from different perspectives, whether it's historical, whether it's building self-esteem. There's a lot in those 39 lessons to really build strong Black boys and Black girls, and some adults actually have benefited from reading it.
Absolutely, absolutely. ENITAN, brother, you knew it was coming. Talk to us about your work, your writings, where you're going.
Man, first of all, we're all geeks here. Let's not even front. Let's not even hide that. We just look different, and that's kind of the whole point, right? Like, I write to shift perspective, kind of similar to everyone. You have a perspective that's unique, based off me being an empath and all of the other random myriad of characteristics that make up who I am. Allow me to see the world in a way that allows me to deal with times like this, and say it's a beautiful time, right? Despite what's happening outside, in spite of the fact that my mom's awaiting some test results, for an illness that fell upon her, despite the fact that we had a baby like right before all this happened, my wife and I, despite the fact that my kids are at home 24/7, I'm trying to get work done, despite the fact there's social unrest, how am I still full of joy, right? Like, what kind of way do I see the world in for me to still be smiling in real time, not just as a coping mechanism? So the first book I wrote was a contemporary gentleman and etiquette book. It was called BEREOLA, the contemporary gentleman and etiquette book for the urban sophisticate. And that book became a bestseller, and it taught me that, hey, look, people, specifically men, are looking for ways to be good. There just aren't enough ways to validate them being good, right? There's not enough thing. It's like this innate desire we have to be good people, and have relationship with others, meaningful relationship. We just don't know how. So I wrote the book that I was always looking for, and I never saw as a Black man, right? I could pick up, John Bridges' series, How to Be a Gentleman. I could pick up Esquire's, etiquette book, but nothing that spoke to me as a Black man. So I wrote a book for us. Second book was for women, called Gentle Woman. Since I wrote for men, I said, let me write for women as well. It's a book that this is like the first copy. It's a book that I was super reluctant to do, but I knew I had to do, because when you have that conviction as artists, like you don't always do what you want to do, but you fall into it in a passionate way because you're called to do it. Right. So I just didn't want to be a part of the group of men who are always seen as saying this is what's wrong with women. Women should be doing this. I didn't want to be a part of that. That's not what I believe. I wanted to shine women in a way, in a light that I believe they deem necessary. Because if you put like a good man and a woman in a room, I feel like the woman's always going to be greater. And I don't say these things to like get applauses or claps or snaps. I say it because to me, it's my truth. And I wanted to write about the women that I saw, the women that I identified with that were out there. This was a time where it was like high reality TV. Right. Women didn't have a category that they could cling to. So I wanted to give them a crown that they could wear. And then the third book, since I talked about men, since I talked about women and relationship, I was like, yo, we need to be able to exist together. If if a man read the first book, a woman read the second book, there's still trouble lurking. There's still the gray area. So I wrote The Gray, which is a relationship etiquette study that talks about those uncomfortable conversations. And shout out to AMBC, Tamika Newhouse, who was responsible for all of us being here. In 2018, she deemed me Male Author of the Year. So all of the books have been bestsellers, and I just sit this near me just as a reminder that, look, man, we're all on here. We're all Black men. Somehow we're writing books and changing lives, and I think that's beautiful. So it's just an encouragement.
I love it. They told me not to curse, so I won't. But ENITAN, talk your talk, brother. I love to see it. I love to see it. You know what I really mean. But Michael, both you and ENITAN talked about recognizing a void, right, and filling that void from a Black perspective. And so I want to come back to you with this question. Is Michael still on? Okay, well, we'll come back. So then, ENITAN, I'm gonna double back to you with this question real quick. You talked about that void and recognizing that and needing to fill that space, especially with something that looked and felt like us.
Right.
Well, I'm going to assume you've got a great perspective on this, because I think we all really will. Why do you believe our stories matter so much as Black creators?
It's not that I just believe it; they do matter, right? I mean, like none of it. We do what we see. Like even as a parent, I now realize, I have to really be mindful of how I'm moving around, because what I believed about like my parents, the truth that they tried to give me, and all those nuggets and all those sayings, like my dad has like a million sayings, it's like all these sayings. He's Nigerian, so he has like for everything. That stuff ends up going out of the other ear. Yeah. So I would observe what they did. I would always observe what they did, and that's what allowed me to be like, okay, naturally, that's what I began to do. That's how somebody that whose parent may be an alcoholic, then turns to an alcoholic. That's how somebody they come from abuse, because they saw it in their home. Although they hated it, they may begin to exhibit those same behaviors. So I know the importance in the positive light to display what I want society to look like within myself, right? Like to offer, instead of complaining about the status quo, like to invest in myself so much that I can't complain, because I'm so focused on making sure I'm better, because essentially we're all a reflection of each other anyway, right? So if I'm better, and I'm going out there, then that's what I'm going to see. So I can't complain about change in the way things look until I change myself.
Right.
So, you know, it's just super important that somebody is out there in the flesh doing what it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
Seeing it changes everything, right? Like, that's how we know it's possible. Yeah. Whether you see it in your mind visually, right, which is inspired by what you see outside and what you see people doing, or whether you see somebody actually in that position that you want to occupy, it's so important that, you know, we be and do that. And that was part of my inspiration in the beginning, right? Like, I might have been 25 when I did my first book, and when I was going to these meetups that I would find on like MySpace and stuff like that, these Black authors in Atlanta, and just these random little, you know, pockets, because I was so obsessed with becoming a writer. I would go to everything, and I was aware of everything, and you know, I was like the youngest guy there, and I was like, yo, it's gonna be amazing when people who know me, when people who don't know me, they just see me, they're gonna be like, yo, this guy wrote a book, right? That's gonna inspire so many people. I knew that. So that was part of my motivation to finish the project, because we all know that writing isn't easy, you know, especially the first one. So it's important to be that example.
Yeah,
it's
100% agree. And in your book, you're talking, or at least initially, you talked about Black children, Black boys and Black girls. And I figure there's got to be an amazing piece of inspiration for you to start there. So I want to dig in a little bit to how you find your inspiration and how you recommend someone listening identify theirs.
I think in context to this conversation, it starts with being honest with ourselves. You know, we as men, we are prone to creating noise, whether it's music, whether it's the game, whether it's girls, whatever, to take us away from really looking on the inside. I think that we have to pause and really spend time with self, with what makes us cry, what makes us angry, what embitters us, what makes us passionate, and write from that perspective. We all have a story to tell. And I think that's ultimately what connects us. I heard it said best is we tell our stories to feel less alone. And so I urge everyone who they may not feel like they are college professors or have all the right words, but I urge you to just write from within, write from your experience, write about your day, write about your fantasy, what perhaps isn't even a reality and actually become reality, because there's so much power in mindset and in the tongue.
That's beautiful. Steve, I want to come to you with the same question, brother. What inspires you, and how do you recommend others who need to be inspired find it?
Yeah. I believe that we all have our own superpowers, and it's our duty to share it with the world. You know, you're doing the world a disservice by not taking that chance to exude and share that magic. And that's what my next book is all about. It's called Take a Deep Breath and Remember Who the F You Are. The blueprint, just in case you forgot. Because with this world and all the chaos that's going on and everything that's going on around us, and you said it best, you know, earlier, like, this is new for all of us. There's no right or wrong way of how to deal with it. If you want to sit back and relax for a little bit, that's okay. If you feel like I need to get up and pump out, you know, these classes, write this book and do so forth, you're right. But at the end of the day, remember that you are a superhero and you have superpowers that you need to share with the world in some form. And we all are artistic. It's just how we share it, right? We as authors share it through text and a body of work through a book. Others through art, others through photography, others through music, and so forth. You just need to tap into that energy. But it does start with what Kenn said is taking, you know, a look in the mirror and being real with yourself and understanding and tapping into those things that might be holding you back.
Yeah.
And being honest with that.
Yeah.
Right. Being honest with that so you can face it and you can do something about it. Understand what your strengths are, understand what your weaknesses are. And by understanding what your weaknesses are, you can now work on it to become a strength.
Yeah.
So, you know, if there's one thing I would say is understand that there's goals.
Yeah.
There are systems that need to be implemented to achieve those goals. So if you want to write a book, you start with saying, hey, I want to write a book and know that I need 60,000 words to complete this book. So every day, the system that I'm going to put in place is writing 1,000 or 2,000 words a day. So I'm a block out an hour on my calendar to write and know that I'm going to dedicate myself towards that.
I love that. Honest with yourself and an honest appraisal of your resources is important. I love that you said that. I've got two more questions that I want to ask to each of you. Steve, I'm going to come right back to you again this time. Question number one is really two parts. I want you to talk about the favorite book that you've written, and then I want you to tell me your favorite book written by someone else, with the caveat that neither be your next book, because that's the next question. And I know you just talked about that, which is why I wanted to stay here, but your favorite book that you've written and your favorite book by someone else.
Yeah, my favorite book is The Mind of a Winner, because it allows people to realize that, again, like I said earlier, we all have our own level of success. And I try to tear down the thought that there's only one form of success. And that is a myth. We all have our own level of success. We all have our own purpose in life. And through The Mind of a Winner, I allow you to tap into Damon John from Shark Tank, Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank, my beautiful wife, Swin Cash, who's a two-time Olympic gold medalist, and so forth. And Kenny Smith from Inside the NBA on TNT. Shout out to Kenny, who walked off of set yesterday to boycott with the players. All these people are in the book. And I try to show you the common thread that exists amongst them all in achieving their level of success. So, you know, I was very proud to write that book. It became a bestseller as well. But the fact that, you know, you're able to sit back and listen, you know, I also recorded an audiobook version of it, hear them talk about their failures in life and how they overcame those failures and how they achieved and became successful was very important for me to share those stories in this body of work. So, you know, if you're a high school student, if you're in college, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a 20-year professional, this book is for you, you know, because there's a common thread of achieving your level of success. And a favorite book that I read was from Damon, called The Art of Broke. Understanding that you don't need to have $10 million in your bank account or $1 million or $100,000 to be able to actually accomplish goals and to achieve goals. And he talks about, you know, how he was able to start FUBU and close FUBU down 6 to 7 times growing up in Queens, and the tools that were afforded to him, you know, the network that was afforded to him in his immediate circle that allowed him to achieve his goals. So he didn't go outside of what was in front of him to achieve those goals and thinking that I need to go to California or I need to go to such and such place to, you know, start FUBU. Like, I can start here and now in my neighborhood and the resources that are afforded to me to be able to accomplish that. So those are my two.
That's awesome. Kenn, I'm going to come back to you quickly. I want you to tell us your favorite book that you've written and your favorite book from someone else. And just keep in mind, we're down to the last 5 minutes, so let's fit it all in here, fellas.
Well, so you said the favorite book that we've written can't be our most recent one?
It can't be your newest one. So
Okay.
If you got something coming out, I want you to tell us about that shortly, but what's your favorite book and from another person? So
my favorite book so far has been The Wedding and Disaster of Philona Mabel. That was a very difficult book to write. It was my second novel. It was my first venture into publishing myself, but it was difficult because I had to really dig into a personal relationship that I had with my mother growing up. But I also wrote from a very interesting standpoint, which was a woman's point of view, to tell a woman or women's story. I'm very proud of that book. Got to do 80 plus book clubs across the nation with it. So that was a favorite. One of my favorite books to date is Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. That book impacted me as an angry late teenager, and has affected me in terms of how I mentor kids.
Right.
It is a prerequisite for me to mentor kids. They have to read some of that book, and it's foundation to what I'm doing, what I'm working on right now.
Awesome. And quickly, tell everyone what your latest or your upcoming book is.
And my latest book, exclusive to Black Writers Weekend, because I haven't shared the title, but it will be called Songs to Burn Bridges By. I'll be releasing it sometime next year, based on this pandemic and situation that we got going on. But that'll be my next book of fiction. My target audience will be the young men. So
I can't wait to get more information on that. ENITAN, we're coming back to you, my brother. Your favorite book from yourself, your favorite book from someone else, and your upcoming project.
Yo, Ken is a cool cat, man. I gotta catch all that work, my man. The Gray, The Gray is my third offering, and it's a relationship etiquette study, and it's my favorite, not because it was more commercially successful. Gentlewoman was by large margins, and they were all bestsellers, but The Gray was such a departure from normalcy for me. It was like this tragic, dark, beautiful, ugly, truthful, honest narrative that was supposed to just purely be nonfiction, but ended up turning into creative nonfiction as soon as I started typing. I was listening to an album, and they just kept reciting the lyrics. I was listening to a song on repeat, and that kind of started to come out in the narrative, and it's these characters just kind of came to life, and I was like, what am I writing? Like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I had a whole plan, but I just kind of like surrendered to the process and let it happen. And in that process, I was able to heal so much, so many things that, your body has a way of conditioning itself where it can forget about trauma, it can forget about things that happened in order to protect itself. So writing that book allowed me to take myself to a point in time and like revisit it and see it from this adult perspective. It's very, very amazing, the portals and the craziness that occurs as an artist when you tap in. The book that is my favorite is the Bible, which it sounds cliche, but it's the most transformative book I've ever read. It's part of my morning routine. I started maybe 3-4 years ago. Finished the New Testament. Now I'm in the Old Testament. It speaks life to power. It's like, I can't explain the work that it does, but it's transformative. The book that I'm working on, that was inspired by this pandemic, pinned to James in the comment. Our body does keep score, like that comment. But is a book called Black Dad. And it's about, reframing the narrative around fatherhood, specifically Black fathers, and, presenting us not as, yellow and blue unicorns that fly and breathe the dragon, but as just regular people. Because every homie I got, man, that's a dad is a super good dad. And, we're not looking for comments when we're outside with our daughter, holding her hand, as if that's like odd. But if a woman is outside with her daughter and her son, the question may be a Black woman, like, hey, where's the dad? That might be the first thought in the mind, but we're not afforded that same luxury. So there's just all these misconceptions and misnomers, not just about Black fatherhood, but fatherhood in general. It's this fraternity that we belong to that is amazing, but nobody talks about unless you're in it. You don't know anything about it until you become one, right? It's like this society, the secret society, and it's this massive amount of love that we carry around we didn't even know was possible that grows by the day.
Hmm.
But nobody talks about this amazing thing, right?
Yep.
We love our kids just as much as our wives, our girlfriends, our babies' moms, widows, whatever. But it's just a different thing.
Yeah.
There's just this difference. It's this phenomenon.
I think you captured that so well. It's different. And using that theme, I'm grateful for the difference that each one of you all bring and the difference that each one of you all make. I'd like to personally thank each one of you, Kenn, ENITAN, Steve, and even though we lost Michael, thank you all. Listen, for this weekend, for these events, you have got an amazing show coming up next. It is I Am Creative. We're signing off. And the very last thing I want to do one more time is thank our sponsors, Defina Books, Amazon KDP, Wattpad, and Goodreads. And with that, people, we are done. Blessings. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, man. So much love.